no one knows. No one knows. We all woke up in a upside down, turning inside out, like we've all been led astray. We've been standing on the outside in, trying to find our friends, like we're all just castaways. Feel like we've been missing out.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to RikiLeaks. Today, I'm joined two favorite boys of mine, husband Rick of RikiLeaks and BigZig. We are back with another predictive programming series of 7. Hi, Zig.
Hello, guys. Rick and Lexi, good to be back with you on RikiLeaks. What a great time to be live.
Hello, good sir. Yes, good to have you. Right in time for the 5th of November. If you haven't already read the title, we're going to dive deep into some maybe facts, theories, but a lot of history with this one, and we'll tie it back to how it affects us here in the modern era. But we're really excited for this episode. We're glad to have Zig along with us. He's a great partner, and I'm ready to dive in if you are.
Yes, the pleasure is all mine. I'm just getting ready of my notes because, I love it. I love to learn. So basically, the 06 version is kind of a bastardized version.
Yes and no. I think, for those of you joining us now, if you've seen the Hollywood version, I may call it, the American version. It's a little bit different for those of our international listeners and those in England. You guys celebrate this every year, and it's kind of a different story. I mean, everybody over there knows what November 5th is and what it means for them, but
they are celebrating bonfire night tonight.
Yeah.
So 3 different ways of looking at this story is like the actual history, the actual Gunpowder Plot, and we'll go into that for the first good part of this talk. And then you have the graphic novel, the book of V for Vendetta, and then the 2005-2006 movie. It's not a bad movie. It's a gorgeous movie. We love the actors, but they changed aspects of not only real life history, but also the real life book written about the history in a fiction form. So we will go over the differences and why Hollywood kind of changed very key aspect of this scenario, but basically they all explain this scenario of the Gunpowder Plot, which was a group of men who wanted to, and we'll go into it in a second, who wanted to take over Parliament and get rid of King James, because King James had gotten rid of the rightful heirs of the throne and had changed the Bible and religion of the UK, and people didn't want that to happen, and it turned into Catholics being killed, or at least heavily fined if they did not change to this new religion. So we are seeing Catholics nowadays be killed, and it's not funny. We will go into the change of the Catholic Church because it's not the same today as it was.
No. And it's changed a lot through history. Now, I hadn't heard or really am super familiar with the graphic novel. Zig, I don't know if you've heard of the novel. I know you've seen the movie, but I wasn't sure if you've heard of the novel.
Heard of it? Know very little about it. As you said, I've seen the movie. I saw it in 2023, and then I watched it again earlier this year for S&Gs. But did not read the graphic novel and know very little about the Gunpowder Plot. So this is all very cool to me and very interesting. So, yeah.
Alrighty. So let's get some of the history taken care of. We have to go back 400 years. Can you read that?
Yes. So in 1605, Robert Catesby assembled a small band of Catholic gentlemen to strike at the heart of Protestant England. And their plan, later called the Gunpowder Plot, was to blow up the House of Lords at the state opening that would result in killing King James I, the political elite, and then rally support for a Catholic succession in the country. Catesby's closest partners were well-known Guy Fawkes, who was a veteran soldier who was charged with the gunpowder, Thomas Percy, Thomas Wintower, Jack Wright, and Robert Keyes. The circle widened to include Ambrose Rookwood, Sir Everard Digby, Francis Tresham, and Thomas Bates. They rented a cellar beneath Parliament and stacked barrels of powder there. I think it was behind some firewood. And on November the 5th, after a warning letter reached Lord Monteagle, officials in the Royal Guard had searched the vaults beneath the Parliament building, and they had seized Guy Fawkes before he could light the fuse. They basically got this mysterious letter warning everybody to, leave Parliament. Or, if you cherish your life, you'll leave Parliament. And that kind of triggered this royal scurry. And they started looking around, and they couldn't find anything first. And then they ended up going to these cellars, and they saw Guy Fawkes standing there by the firewood. He was dressed in his hat and his cape, and he had spurs on, basically ready to, jump on a horse at any minute. And they uncovered these gunpowder barrels and matches in his coat. Guy Fawkes' capture unraveled the entire conspiracy. Catesby, Percy, and the Wright brothers were killed in flight later on, and the others were tried and executed in early 1606. The failure inspired yearly 5th of November commemorations with bonfires and fireworks. The episode reveals that the intense religious strain of early Stuart England and the lengths that some were willing to go to change the throne's faith. To this day, the cellars beneath Parliament are still checked the day before Parliament opens. And I believe, too, that even the bonfires, they have effigies of Guy Fawkes that they light on fire. And then they do fireworks to commemorate the explosions that never happened. So in a nutshell, that is the whole kit and caboodle, the plot. You knew most of that, didn't you?
Right. Yeah. Well, I've heard of it. Yeah. And I know of it, but to that detail, no. But yes. Overall, yeah. However, I do find it ironic, like you said, like it never went off, but they still check it every year. They're very paranoid about it and celebrate it. So,
right.
Very interesting.
Some little other facts in there that the guy, when Fawkes was captured, and they had him for a little while. He was actually tortured pretty bad. I mean, at first he was very loyal and he wouldn't give up any of the co-conspirators. And King James actually got an interview with him and asked him straight up, who's part of this? Why would you do this? Do you have any regrets? I think there's a famous letter recording of the interview, and Guy Fawkes, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, "No, I have no regrets, only that I couldn't finish my task." And that was pretty much, that sealed the deal. And they started torturing him until he finally caved and signed a confession. And it's barely readable, his own signature, because they had tortured him so bad. And then they held on to him, and then they went after the other guys. So it was pretty intense.
Yeah. Torture back then too is, people think comedy. Can you imagine?
Yeah, it's
wow.
It's no joke. Yeah, definitely not something to laugh about too bad.
Yeah, a lot of people died there, and then you were hung, drawn, and quartered. We'll get into it later, but Guy Fawkes, he didn't allow himself to be hung. He jumped to his own death, and to me, that's taking your own. You didn't allow the government to take your life and use your life as a sacrifice. You took your life, and you were able to utilize the sacrifice that made for, in my opinion, for his message to go on for centuries. And everyone knows about the Q conspiracy, and right before Q, there was the Anonymous, and Anonymous was using Guy Fawkes' mask, and he was explaining there's about to be unveiling of corruption within every government, and he chose to use Guy Fawkes. So it's interesting that even 400 years later, you can't kill this idea. It's still a message to the world, which I think is why Hollywood, which I think was still done in Britain, but it tried so hard to change the movie versus the book in real life history. So we'll get into that in a second. Can you read this?
Yeah. So the word traitor carries the weight of authority, yet it is a title given only by those who hold power. In the case of Guy Fawkes and his co-conspirators, History was recorded by the English crown that survived the Gunpowder Plot, not by the men who died for their cause. These men believed themselves defender of faith, standing against a government that had outlawed their religion, seized their property, and had driven their priests underground. To King James I, however, their defiance represented the ultimate betrayal, an assault not only on the monarchy, but on the divine order that justified his rule. Publicly branding them as traitors served a dual purpose. It extinguished any sympathy for their cause and reminded the populace that rebellion against the crown was equivalent to rebellion against God. Their execution, hanging, drawing, and quartering was less about the punishment and more about performance. It was a warning carved into the national consciousness, a ritual designed to transfer fear into loyalty. The spectacle made martyrs impossible, and it made obedience preferable. By transforming the conspirators into villains, the crown solidified Protestant unity and reinforced its control over both church and state. The word traitor became a political tool, a shield for the monarchy to justify surveillance, censorship, and religious suppression. Centuries later, that same manipulation of language, where dissident becomes treason, still echoes through modern politics, reminding us that every accusation of betrayal conceals the hand that defines loyalty. Well said. And I think, Zig, we were talking a little bit earlier about this when I was on my way home, but a lot of what was happening with this plot, they being the crown, the people who survived this, and with the fact that it was the early 17th century in 1605, there's never going to be any truth about what was really happening behind the scenes, who was really orchestrating this, and who was maybe manipulating Robert Catesby to carry out this plot, who maybe, for lack of a better term, radicalized him to make this move to...
I don't think anyone radicalized him. I think there were people who saw the Catholic Church changing.
Mm-hmm.
Even the Vatican started going against the Catholic Church. At that time, the Jesuits weren't completely taken over yet. They had their little secret society. They were all hearing whisperings of the church being changed. King James, we have King James Bible versions because the vampire queen came and took a baby from Mary Queen of Scots, who was the rightful heir, took baby King James, made him change his mother, threw mother in a tower, and changed the religion of the UK, changed the Bible as we know it. You can change, there's been tiny little words in the Bible, especially the King James version, that completely changed the message, completely changed and prayers and all this stuff, which is really just spells. And I think he was just fed up with it, and there are people being killed for even talking about this. So I don't think he was made to do anything. I think he was definitely the head orchestrator.
Fascinating. Because that Guy Fawkes Max, I didn't know that was associated with the Anonymous. I knew it was with the Q and the Anonymous group, right?
Yeah.
But I made the Jason mask that I had that says paying for kind of like an Americanized version of it, of the rebellion. And kind of the same message, but it's just interesting how here I sit with the King James version of the Bible. And it was the first Bible that was ever given to me in 2006 when I was on my awakening journey for the first time. So it's funny how this all comes full circle. It's fascinating. It's chilling, actually, to be honest with you. So yeah, this is great, guys. Wow.
It makes you think a lot. So I mean, we may never know, but there was certainly it was certainly more than just hey, these guys tried to blow us up and let's punish them. It was certainly
there was
a reason why behind it.
Yeah,
and of course the victors make history. They write it down.
The truth shall always be revealed.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much truth overflowing right now. It's crazy to keep up with that, So yeah. Anyway, this is
totally.
Wow.
I'm glad you agree. So Lexi put together this chart that kind of shows I would say the dichotomy of how the Catholic faith was defined through the centuries,
Okay.
really going through Charlemagne. But yeah, Lexi, take us away on this.
I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Tomorrow, after I post this video, I'll post a series I did with a friend, Tony Peters, I think last year, and it was covering The Godfather, and we cover a little bit of this information. But basically, it's Catholics, and I need everyone to realize the Catholics that we know nowadays was not the Catholics that they were talking about in 1600s, and the Catholics in the 1600s were not the same Catholics as the right before the 11th century. The Catholics of the 11th century were not the same Catholics as when Charlemagne was taking over the Roman Empire. The Catholics during Charlemagne taking over the Roman Empire were not the same as the Catholics that came in the 1st through 5th century. The Catholic Church has seen a lot of change. I think when the Catholics were under Charlemagne, that was the most organized and maybe, I don't want to say pure, but basically Charlemagne, the last emperor of the Roman Empire, he situated himself in the church. Basically, nowadays we always say separate church and state. Well, he was like, no, because the church has this guy called the Pope, and the Pope is in a position that he can make himself seem like a god and to be worshipped, and that is a very dangerous position. So Charlemagne had basically the Roman emperor be hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder with the Pope to oversee that the church didn't become something crazy. And the main thing I want to talk about with this, and I brought it up in the Godfather episode, is there is a fictitious movie called The Priest. It's technically kind of like a little horror movie, but I think that is the most realistic version of what happened to the Catholic Church. I'll try to remind myself to put a part of that movie in here. However, the idea of the movie Priest is this post-apocalyptic society, which to me, they're trying to make it seem like it's going to happen in our future. I think this is the real story of what happened in our past, because post-apocalyptic could mean the fall of the Roman Empire. After the fall of the Roman Empire, that was a post-apocalyptic state. A lot of people do believe that the rapture has already happened, that we have already been in tribulations. Tribulations, you're going to see horrible things done to children, cannibalism, all this stuff that we see nowadays. So this movie, The Priest, was explaining that the Catholic Church was teaching priests how to fight against demons of all sorts. And then the Catholic Church basically gets taken over by vampires. And of course, they stop killing vampires and they pretend that vampires aren't real. And the vampires in the movie are like these underground demons that start to bite humans. And the humans become these hybrids. And the very first human that was bitten was a priest. So he was a priest, someone doing all these exorcisms to demons. And then he becomes like the first human vampire. And of course, the end of the movie, spoiler alert, Paul Bettany, which is the main priest, he kills hundreds of vampires, cuts off one of their heads, takes it into a Catholic church, and he's like, hey, I know you guys are corrupt. I know you guys know what's going on. You guys are telling everyone that vampires or these demons underground are gone, but here they are. I just killed a bunch. They're like 5 miles that way. You guys are all, and he's telling the congregation, like, believe the church anymore. The church has changed. And I think, like, when you read history, that's kind of how the Catholic Church really was handled. So there are major differences. I know when we talk about this story nowadays, people are like, oh, that's so good, we got away from Catholics. And it's like they only know of the Catholic Church after the vampire takeover. You didn't understand what these people were necessarily fighting for. And that's kind of why I wanted to just really quickly cover this. It is different than what we're used to when it comes to talking about the church.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I saw, and this has been something I've been, a lot of us have been wrestling with, I'm sure, in the last, decade, me, especially in the last 5 years, with the rapture already happening. They said millennial reign already happened, which is if the history is written by victors, then the Dark Ages never happened. That's when Satan was bound to the pit of misery for 1,000 years or whatever. And he fell, and then we came out, and that was the beginning of what you guys are kind of talking about right here. I think, if I'm correct, the way this guy was breaking it out, and of course this was all opinion on him, and then now we're at the end all be all for obviously ever, which I resonate with too. I'm sure you guys too as well. So
and we're seeing a period of, everybody's talking about it now. It's the revival of faith, the revival of God, and it chokes me up to talk about it, because that's where the last stages are. That's when the last cards are played. And when you think about even Noah giving his preach before,
nothing can stop it.
Nothing can stop it. And God is giving you that chance to enter the covenant with him and accept him. And if you miss that, then that door will be shut. And I believe that door is getting ready to close at some point in the near future, or is on its way. So this is a very divinely charged time. And it's important to know that the changes, as much as like Lexi pointed out, that people have tried to change the faith, you cannot stop. You cannot stop God's will, period.
Absolutely. You bring a great point. And, I say this all the time. It's like, the Bible and stuff, people in the church or whatever, like mainstream, they call it blasphemy when we talk about these kind of things, but it's reality. It's like when you realize copyright, editing, manipulation of words and people changing things around when you have control and, all this, it's like, you got to come to that realization that, okay, get over it now. Let's get focused on what we need to do to fulfill the mission. Obviously, we're here. Get over your feelings and let's go. So it's just fascinating to me. Like you said, the Lord's word still has prevailed no matter how much they've tried to screw it up. Yes. And that just makes and this revival in faith, especially over the last it started with Trump's assassination, and obviously with Charlie Kirk, it's just amped up. But people can feel it. There's something going on, and right now it's like you can definitely see it's strictly good versus evil. It's leaning that way. That's the choice.
And that's a perfect segue into this slide. We talk about the divisiveness. So in the 1600s, England were marked by a deep spiritual division and political anxiety. The atmosphere was tense, and the Protestant Reformation had completely reshaped Europe, shattering centuries of Catholic dominance and turning faith into a battleground of identity and allegiance. And in England, that fracture began with Henry VIII's break from Rome a century earlier. His personal dispute with the Pope over marriage and authority evolved into a national severing of spiritual ties. The monarch became the head of the Church of England, in a move that permanently intertwined religion with politics and made loyalty to the crown a test of faith. For the devout Catholics, this shift was more than heresy. It was exile in their own homeland. They were forbidden from holding office. Paying homage to the Pope became treason, and secret masses were punished by imprisonment or death. Across the English Channel, Catholic Europe viewed Protestant England as a renegade nation that had usurped divine order. Spain and France plotted restoration through war or infiltration, while the English Protestants saw every Catholic priest a spy of Rome. And by the early 1600s, this paranoia had hardened into policy. King James I inherited a realm steeped in suspicion where papal loyalty was equated with sedition. The Gunpowder Plot grew from this poisoned soil, a desperate attempt by persecuted believers to overturn a government that denied their worship. Yet the very climate that birthed the plot ensured its failure. Every confession, every whisper of rebellion was magnified by fear, proving that in England, faith itself had become a political crime. And
sound familiar?
Yeah, seriously. It's like, hey, how dare you have faith, right? People are still out to be separated from faith or spirituality in all forms, yet most of those people, I'd say, where many of those arguments go in reality, in real life, is, well, so you believe in the devil, you believe in Satan? Oh, yes, of course, they say. So it's like, well, in that world, then so must God exist then. So how can you then say you believe in the devil when you can't believe in the existence of God? There can't be one without the other. So at that point, like, whose side are you on? And that's that's where it gets a little dicey.
That's so funny, because that's what I'm saying. Like, you believe in the devil and that's cool, but you don't believe that there's another force at being. So it just fascinates me how easy it is for people to believe in evil, just like you said, like literally word for word. I used to think that in my head, and I used to say it to people too, in situations, and it would just be so ridiculous to me to see how these people acted, and just like literally threw the middle finger to the good side for just to be cool or whatever. It's like, it just blew my mind how ignorant and stupid that was.
And you can still tell, I didn't want to bring this up, but it's coming out of me. But like on the fives, on the Fox, wait, is it the no, on Greg Gutfeld, which I think this should be spoken about because it's the largest TV show in the nation right now. And they tried to do the opposite of The View, having one person of each type. Having a slightly liberal leaning person, having an ex-Democrat, and then they bring on people of color, people of, different Judaism backgrounds, and like they bring on people of all sorts. And their person, Kat, I love her, but this has, it's true. She is trying to represent this libertarian wing of the party, and the libertarian wing of the party, I think, has gotten immediately taken over. But she tries to push, and I think maybe Fox tries to push this on her. I don't know if if these are her words, or if Fox tries to make her appeal to the agnostic or even atheist group. But this girl, I mean, she's literally a walking miracle. She was pregnant, had cancer during her pregnancy, and still had a healthy baby and cured her cancer. And she, to this day, is like, I don't believe in God. I feel great for the people who do believe in God, but I don't believe in it. And it's like, dude, you've been given 2 miracles. It's 3 miracles, because it's like you had a baby, which is the biggest miracle a human could do. Then you got over your cancer, a life-threatening illness, and you did it at the same time. Like, that's a miracle. So some people are given these gifts of God, and they're still refusing to see it. And it's just so interesting. I think they're trying to make her appease to a certain group of people who still don't see the light. And for the people who are agnostic or atheists, I'm not telling you to go to the Catholic Church at all. Heck, I'm not even telling you to go to the real church. I think baptismal is great. I think church on Sundays is kind of blasphemous. But the temple, your body's a temple. The kingdom of heaven is within you. We have all we need right here. But the fact that like you won't open your eyes up to the possibility of there just being a creator with a huge plan, and then kind of a demon trying to unveil that plan at every single intersection, it's just mind-boggling to me. So, yeah,
we're talking about Kat Temp, right? The blonde-haired girl with the glasses on Gutfeld, who was with Tyrus in the beginning, like when this all, like, right. I agree with you. I did not know, however, she had cancer. I knew she obviously was pregnant, had a baby, and I did not know that was her personal views. To be honest with you, I didn't know that about her. So that is very intriguing to me, and I think you're right, because
she brings it up like once every now and then. She's like, I don't believe in God. I'm glad people do, but I don't. And she keeps saying it. And I thought that was going to change after the baby, after the curing herself of this horrible disease. And I don't know if Fox is kind of her lean into that to get that group of people, or if she just hasn't seen the light, and some of these people are still in such a dark place. And that's something to say either way.
And she's actively separating herself from it.
Yeah. Because I know, well, I would think Tyrus doesn't feel that way. And most of the ladies at Fox seem to be pretty spiritual. At least they outwardly seem. But I don't see it through them, because the way they talk is, to me, extremely fake. Like you said, the temple, the church is within. Like technically, this is church right now, and I'm
Yeah.
so glad you mentioned that, Lexi Rick. She's like, when Catholics started having people go to confessions and it went to the mafia and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And it was so funny to me because it was like that never made sense to me, even as a kid. I'm like,
No.
who made this
You don't have
man
to confess.
appointed by God to hear everybody's gossip and then do 5 Hail Marys and 10 push-ups or something, whatever, to get rid of whatever.
Where is that in
like
God's
That
word?
came up
What?
late into the Catholic,
You know?
like after it was taken over by the vampires, basically. Tell us all of your sins, and then it turned into this mafia thing. And even that goes back to Israel. And if you watch my Godfather episode, me and Tony, we looked into, like, we watched The Godfather, and we broke up each scene. And I'm like, okay, did this actually happen? And all of the stuff did happen, and I was expecting it to go to Rome or Italy or the Vatican, but it kept going back to Israel. Like on Godfather 2, when they're all in Cuba, and it goes into like the betting of Las Vegas during Cuba and Las Vegas. And I looked up that whole scene, and it really did happen in the years that they were talking about, except it wasn't the Vatican or Rome. It was Israel that was like the head of the mafia. And I was like, what? Like, this is crazy. So there's even, some leads that it's not even, the Vatican wasn't even being ran by Romans at that point. It was being ran by Israel. I'm not saying the Romans are anything good. It's just the change of hands, change of power.
Yeah. And in a way, like the few that got away, they kind of like all collaborated behind the scenes. Ultimately, by choice, choosing Israel still running everything behind the scenes, as we've came to find out, or used to anyway. But this is all just so insanely crazy. So I love it, and I'm glad we're setting the record straight. So
Definitely.
So I mean, in the aftermath of the Reformation, a few groups provoked more suspicion and fascination than the Jesuits. Formed originally as an intellectual and missionary arm of the Catholic Church, the Society of Jesus was admired for its education, discipline, and persuasive rhetoric. But to Protestant England, it embodied the invisible hand of Rome. Jesuit priests, trained in secrecy and strategy, were seen as master infiltrators capable of reshaping hearts and kingdoms alike. Henry Garnet, a senior Jesuit in England, became the symbol of this fear. Though denied foreknowledge of the Gunpowder Plot, he was executed for moral complicity, accused of knowing yet failing to act, an accusation as theological as it was political. Fringe historians argue that the Jesuits' veil of loyalty served both sides. Some claim that the order had woven a vast vinculum, a hidden bond between Catholic and Protestant powers, manipulating both for a higher purpose. Others believed that they were not Rome's puppeteers, but merely pawns, ensnared in the very systems that they sought to convert. Whether orchestrators or scapegoats, the Jesuits became the perfect specter, scholars of faith and spies of empire. Their supposed infiltration blurred the lines between martyr and manipulator, leaving the question unresolved: were they defending divine truth or crafting a new empire of the mind beneath the vestments of God?
I want to say something really quick on this. Like everything we've talked about, once it gets too big, gets too much money, once too many big people are involved, it becomes corrupt, basically. So the Jesuits, from what I can understand, when they got started, it totally was supposed to be good. And I do believe it was started, a soldier turns mystic, basically 1534 to 1540. It was everything that they started off to be, and they wanted to get rid of corruption in big groups. And then they began as mystic swords and a conscience, seeking perfect union with Christ through reason and service, but binding themselves so closely to centers of power, the Pope, the monarchs, the emperors. They became what they once hated, and now like every single ties to a Jesuit.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they purposefully became like an undercover to be so enthralled in every aspect of humanity to where it was kind of like 21 Jump Street, like such what is that called?
Undercover?
Like undercover double agent.
Yeah, triple agents.
Triple agents. I don't know if they wanted that to happen or if they just simply became corrupt. So now they're bad, but they didn't start off that way.
Right. And that's the other thing people are so quick to forget. It's like history is written by the winners. I know we sound like pull string draws, but it's such a simple, easy truth to remember. It's like we don't know ish. We think we do, but we're trying to figure it out. Remember, put the pieces together.
So there's a big divide in the Vatican as well, and in the 1600s, it exposed a very deep fracture within the Vatican itself. A spiritual empire torn between divine mission and earthly politics. The Protestant Reformation had shaken the Catholic hierarchy to its core, forcing Rome to choose between humility and dominance. In response, the Counter-Reformation strengthened the papacy's control, but it also invited corruption, favoritism, and power struggles amongst cardinals and noble families. Competing orders, the Jesuits, Dominicans, and Franciscans fought not only over theology, but over influence within the Holy See. Papal court became less a sanctuary of faith and more a diplomatic arena where alliances were bought with silver and sealed in bloodlines. Amid this turmoil, men like Guy Fawkes appeared almost anachronistic. His devotion was militant, absolute, and uncompromising. A kind of purity that embarrassed a Vatican now fluent in compromise. Even Catholic monarchs viewed him as a liability. Rome wanted conversion through politics, not martyrdom through explosives. To many within the Curia, Fawkes represented the dangerous ghost of the medieval crusader, sincere but uncontrollable. His zeal illuminated the Vatican's internal decay. The church no longer feared heresy as much as fanaticism, for zeal could not be bribed or tamed. Thus, while Protestants condemned Fawkes as a traitor, the Vatican regarded him with quiet discomfort. His fire revealed what the papacy could no longer hide, that its power had shifted from the altar to the throne, from the heart of faith to the machinery of empire. And those of you who may be, papal scholars, there's a lot that the popes did. There's a lot of decrees. I mean, we don't have any of them listed, but you can go on your own time and do some research about some of the, papal decrees that they did to where they literally changed the word of God, and they proclaimed themselves as we don't need God's word. We are the voice of God. We're the spokespeople. We make God's word what we want it to. And it really just became the church of man at that point.
And that's what Charlemagne tried to stop because it was going to happen. So he's like, even though he was the state, he saw joining alongside this church or religion that was taking over the land. He's like, we have to have a balance of powers, and someone needs to check your ass so that doesn't happen. And then, of course, a couple hundred years later, it happened.
So what do you think about this?
I just think it's fascinating that there's nothing new under the sun and everything repeats itself. It's such a mirror of today in so many ways. It's just like right in your face, mind blowing. Just
boom.
Poetic. It's like I laugh. Like people like. My facial expressions are crazy because I just think I just have weird facial expressions. But like I'll laugh at this stuff. It's just because like we've been through, like we've heard so much of this heartbreak. Like, oh, we've been duped, and it's like we've done enough crying and all that, and sleepless nights when we've heard of these things that they do to the children and what we've been through and all this millennia and whatever. And we're here now. We can either laugh or cry about it, and it's like I'm not taking it lightly as in like making fun of it. It's just like, wow, it's just so unbelievable. It's and put so together so nicely. It's so believable.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not as surprised now.
No, not at all. Especially, yeah. after what we've known, what they've been doing to us, actively right in our face in plain sight.
There was a veer, kind of a change in direction. And when the church changed hands last, following the Reformation, the Vatican entered a new era of survival disguised as sovereignty, independence. The papacy learned to govern like a monarch and to trade faith like currency. Once the guardian of Christendom, the church now forged partnerships with secular powers to maintain relevance. Banking families, such as the Medicis and the Borgias, financed the papal state, while the royal houses used the church moral authority to justify wars and colonization. The sacred and political became inseparable, a vast vinculum binding altars to thrones. This merger marked a quiet coup within Christianity. The papacy's spiritual mandate was diluted by treaties, taxes, and territorial control. Cardinals became diplomats, bishops became financiers, and salvation itself was measured in indulgences and alliances. For the ordinary believers, the church no longer spoke the language of the soul, but that of empire. In this context, Guy Fawkes' rebellion can be seen less as blind fanaticism and more as a desperate protest against consolidation, both political and spiritual. He was fighting an invisible empire that spanned monarchs and mitred crowns alike, one that reduced divine truth to policy. His plot, though doomed, symbolized resistance to a system where God had become a figurehead and power through faith. The changeover of the church was not merely doctrinal. It was a transference of authority from heaven to earth, from revelation to rule. In destroying Parliament, Fawkes sought to shatter that illusion to reclaim faith from the vindicated hands of empire. And I mean, just imagine for a second, if you will, what it would be like to be a peasant. You know, back in the 1600s and 1605, you didn't really have a choice when you were told to go from, you know, Catholicism to the Protestant faith. You couldn't risk being fined. You couldn't risk losing your family, or, you know, you wanted to show loyalty to the crown. And it must have been such a divide at that time, whereas more the noble, you know, English people, they could have in secret still supported the Catholicism or had it either way. But back then, I mean, there was still that societal breakdown. I mean, the peasants or people who just didn't have the information or the knowledge to even make a choice. They were caught up in this too. Like you said earlier, Zig, a lot of what we see today mirrored in what's in history. There's a lot of people out there in the world right now who don't have a choice. You know, they can't afford to have a different political opinion or a spiritual opinion because they're afraid that it's going to cost them their livelihood. And that's not fair at all.
Right, Rick, you alluded, we've talked about this. It's like England right now. You get locked up for a meme, right? So this reminds me of Minority Report, that movie, you know, where it's thought crimes, like real time. It's 2025 right here, and this is literally happening. It's just like you said. It's like I said, and nothing new under the sun. This is all reflection of what's happening today on steroids in some type of way. And it was probably a lot worse because, like, back then you couldn't just go to the Walmart or the 7-Eleven down the street and get a candy bar and like be good for the night if you were like dead broke or something, you know. You had to go out and hunt and kill and skin and go to the local market, and in order to go to the local market you had to be a part of the community and people had to know you, and you traded with what you had, you know, for currency. You bartered and traded pretty much, unless you had gold, if I'm not mistaken. Right. But yeah, it's not like they just had convenience stores lined up where you could just get something to eat real quick. No, you had to go along with what was.
They also didn't have a form of like mass communication. And I think that's the ultimate fail of this 1600 plot and why it did fail. Because if you call someone a traitor, you just have to believe they're a traitor. You're like, oh my God, they tried to kill the king. And it's like, no, the king was stolen and brainwashed. And now he has turned into something else. He's turned into a group, a dark state. That is what the king actually is. But you can't tell a bunch of people that. And then you have people fighting just to get food on the table and in the fields and working for really, being and everything. So you can't expect people, I don't want to call them stupid because they were raised stupid. That's kind of that whole allegory of like, these people didn't have the knowledge, they couldn't get the knowledge. So everything that like was failed in 1600, it was picked up in 2020 because we now have immediate communication throughout the world. And I'm not a fan or on TikTok, but TikTok got so many people awake in 2020, they couldn't hide the fact that the virus was either made from a biolab in Ukraine or China. So that's kind of how this all came back with fire and vengeance, because we were able to get the information out to people.
And that's why it's Lexi, you guys both bring a great point, and we got to pound this home on how significant it is the time that we are in, because how many of these tales have we heard throughout time where everybody could just hop on and create a podcast on YouTube or Rumble or whatever and communicate with people across the world, across the nation, whatever, in real time and get real-time news. Well, the government's saying this, but over here, all these thousands of people on the ground with their iPhones are saying this is happening. So it's like, who do you believe? So it's like, that's the cat's out of the bag. So it's like, we are in a time right now where the Great Divide is literally happening, and better get your ish together quick.
Pick a side.
Yeah.
Okay, this is going to be a fun slide. I'll cover it a little bit more. So Alan Moore's V for Vendetta, the graphic novel, and the film adaptation, they share the same mass, but wear different faces completely. In the graphic novel, Moore presents liberal ideology as part of the same corrupt cycle as fascism, two extremes feeding the same machine of control. His dystopian England is not simply a right-wing nightmare, but a warning against blind faith in any ideology, including liberal utopianism that forgets personal responsibility. In the 2005 film, however, that reverses that message. It recast V as a freedom fighter leading this populist uprising against conservative tyranny, aligning the story with modern political activism they wanted to push out 10, 15 years later, what we're having to deal with now. The nuance of Moore's critique, his distrust of any centralized power, was replaced by cinematic morality, where liberals were the heroes of progress. And the result is The Myth Inverted, a story about self-liberation transformed into propaganda for collective revolution, turning Moore's anarchist caution into a Hollywood crusade. The true villain of the graphic novel break down Moore's intent, how V for Vendetta portrays both fascism and unrestrained liberalism as manipulative extremes of the same mechanism. Anarchy, in Moore's vision, is spiritual self-governance, not chaos. I wanted to show a little video. Hold on. Okay, so really quick. So this, what I mean by this is, in the movie, there's a part where a late night talk show who's witty and you can't control what he's saying is raided by the government, and he has all these artifacts, which I'm all for keeping artifacts of all sorts. But the idea was they took the Quran from his house, because you're not allowed to have a Quran, which is hilarious. Because nowadays we all know that the UK is being taken over by Islam. So there's more Qurans and not being censored to have a Quran nowadays there than it ever has been before. And we're not saying that the Muslim people who are under this spell are the bad guys. We're talking about that religion. We're talking about how this religion was taken over by vampires. Well, Islam was taken over by vampires. If you look up Muslims in the 60s, they were beautiful women wearing short skirts who looked like modern women. So something happened to what we know as Muslims and how the Islam faith has changed and taken away women's rights and has taken over the world, really. And it's very, very hostile. But the liberals are the ones that are opening their arms to this takeover, which is hilarious because they talk about fighting for women's rights and they stand up for this horrible, horrible takeover that is actually killing women, chopping off women's genitalia. And we are even seeing Sharia law take over as transgenderism, the same way that Sharia law were taking over and mutilating children. You know, they just changed it to a cool name that you can't like make fun of. So Piers Morgan, not only has he spoken about being like, I am that talk show host in the show, like that is me. Everyone knows that the late night talk show host was like framed after Piers Morgan. Well, he was on The Five last night.
You're going to need two chairs here. Yeah. You're going to need old-fashioned people who identify as liberals. Bill Maher, Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, RFK. There's a whole lot of people. Me, people who would have happily said, I'm a liberal, but who now think, well, that doesn't describe what liberalism is to me. They've become the new fascists.
And of course, any minute now, we're going to find out literally who won our New York mayoral spot, which is literally a communist socialist. So what?
Oh, it's
Right.
going to close the tab.
Thank you. Okay, where do I go? This one.
Even what's
Nope,
his name
that's
on
not
the Five? Howard, is that his name? Howard, the Democrat guy besides Jessica that they have in Howard. Is that his name or whatever?
Howard.
He was like, even today he was disgusted by
Harold.
Harold. You were so close.
That's it. Yeah.
I couldn't think of it
He
either. I was like,
seems cool.
Howard, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Harold is an old school liberal, which many people can associate with. He thinks the whole party's gone to shit. He's not happy about it. But it also takes people to get the cojones who are like Harold to run for office. It's like, okay, well, if you're old school, then like you should have ran. Like, why didn't you ran? Are you trying to hold your spot open for like a presidential run, or do you have blackmail that you can't run for either of them, or are you just full of shit and like just telling us what we all want to hear? But the truth is, the word liberal, people of the liberal arts, people of creativity, people who use a certain part of their brain, we have like bastardized this word liberal to mean Democrat, but it doesn't. It truly doesn't. Trump is extremely liberal. He's a theater man. He's all about the show. Have you seen his office? It looks like a freaking like antique roadshow because he has everything everywhere. That's liberal. And also liberal just meaning too much. You're spreading a lot of something. You're liberally applying something. So someone being too far right is liberal, just as someone can be too far left. The word TOO, too much, means liberal. So there are a lot of liberals in this party. That does not mean they are Republican. And I've always tried to make that. MAGA is not Republican. We are seeing today the GOP fighting people like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, us, because we have a problem with what Israel's doing. We are not closing a blind eye to all this stuff Israel's doing, and the GOP is being ran by AIPAC, who is getting like all the money is from Israel. So this is where people are like, MAGA does not mean conservative. MAGA does not mean you're a Republican now. MAGA does not mean we close our doors. There's a bunch of gays. There's a bunch of liberals who don't want to see what's happening in the leftist movement, but they also are different from the GOP of old yesteryear, basically.
Yeah, the old school gay communities are so embarrassed. They don't even. They're disgusted.
Yeah.
You know, like the ones that just wanted to be left alone. You know what I mean, and do their thing, and still go to work with and associate with in public life, and they were cool and whatever. And it goes just how he kind of like how life should have been. You know, we got to see a little glimpse of it until it all went to complete. Because I would have identified as a liberal too back then. I voted Republican even though I couldn't stand it. I didn't, unless it was 9/11. I'm getting off on a tangent here, but overall, I agree with what you're saying because we go back to Kat Timp, and she's doing a disservice. Like you said, I don't know if that's Fox doing that because the owner of Fox is an atheist, but married to a very Christian person, which makes no sense to explain that. I don't know, make it make sense, whatever, it doesn't matter. But either way, thank God for, thanks source for people like you and Rick to be able to dissect this and paint a great clean picture for everybody to share this information and digest it. It's really beautiful to see. So thank you.
Thank you. And even now it's not clear. I try to make it as just like as history has unfolded, that has been forgotten, and as the different variations of fiction explaining that same history has unfolded, it's still like a pile of shit. Like, we're still polishing turds, really. It's not beautifully clear. And I think we will, whenever disclosure does happen, which is hopefully very soon, it'll make a lot more sense. But people need to realize, like, the other side of the stories, even if it's just rumors, even if it's only like a portion of the missing picture, people need to realize, like, there's other stuff being done at this point.
Right. Like 9/11 was the best promo for, false flag operation. They had, our generation, hook, line, and sinker. You couldn't find an American flag. I mean, we were talking about this, and it was like, as time went on, the Patriot Act, Katrina, we were like, wait, we're going to Iraq first? What happened to this mountain man, Osama bin Laden? Yeah, like, things just started not making sense, and it further pushed like me away from all like that party in general. And like, so it's like I didn't buy the Obama stuff at all, nor did I like the other choice, but I went with the other choice, whatever. But still, it was just like neither one was likable. So it was just like, you would rather identify with the latter than what especially the demon rats have become now, which is extremely to the beyond lunatic. Like, it's like if AOC and Bernie Sanders had a baby.
There you go. Gosh.
Woo! His name's Ron Mandami.
It's getting out of control.
Boom. Oh, yes.
Shots fired. I hate him so much.
Oh yeah, I'm not good. That's gonna be. Hey, they're gonna have to learn. You got to show the people. It's like, but then all the millionaires have already been moving out of there since pre-COVID. Same with Cali. So it's like, who's gonna fund all these dudes' ideas?
Yeah, nobody. Get your notepad ready for some of these parallels.
We have about 4 more slides. Hang in there with us, you guys.
God, the state, and the mask. So we're going to talk real quick about this. The mask of V, of Guy Fawkes, functions as both a disguise and a theological metaphor. Within Alan Moore's vision, the mask represents divine anonymity. The idea that true power, like God, is unseen and unnameable. In mystic traditions, particularly the Gnostic and Hermetic thought, the divine is beyond definition. To name God is to limit him. V's mask embodies the same paradox. His face, concealed from the world, allows his ideals, not his ego, to become immortal. The mask equalizes identity, suggesting that justice and truth are not owned by any one person, but move through all who seek. This aligns with the Jesuits' notion of the hidden hand of providence, a belief that divine will often operates invisibly through human events. Just as the Jesuit missionaries served unseen across kingdoms, V becomes a vessel for unseen purpose. Both challenge the notion of authority as visible hierarchy. The state demands faces, registration, allegiance, confession, while the divine hides behind creation itself. In V for Vendetta, mask thus becomes sacred rebellion, a veil that reveals. It exposes how the state mimics religion's structure through dogma, fear, and ritual, while suppressing its mystery. In the end, the mask signifies what the church forgot, that God's presence is not found in rulers or icons, but in the anonymous flames that move through every act of liberation.
Reminds me of in 2020, I don't know how many people remember, but they were putting like facial recognition cameras all over China, and kids at university, Chinese or Taiwan, were they Taiwanese? Where were they?
Hong Kong.
It was okay. So they were Chinese students playing on masks so that they wouldn't be seen by these cameras everywhere of facial recognition, which I think is also happening in the UK. And they were making like Molotovs. They were smart Chinese students, and they were fighting back against the government. And I'll try and find some videos of it. It was fascinating.
It was like late 2019, really.
Yeah, right before
right before it broke the pandemic. It was wild. And then that was the yellow vests in France. In France as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And just a few years prior was Brexit. And I'll let you guys keep going because I know you got the slides. So
yes, a few years before was Brexit. It all was looming, and it's all European the same people.
Yeah.
They have, I truly believe what Trump is doing with the tariffs and everything. They have bled these powers dry. And that's why they're all coming to the table now, because they don't have any mommy daddies like money. So I really, truly believe we are at the very severed head of all these like really, really Jesuit modern forces, these huge companies. And I already kind of really did bring this. If you want to know more about the Jesuit Order of Modern Echoes, basically, if you look at these top tier banking systems, they all go to Jesuit orders, Jesuit schools. And like I said, I don't know if they just simply got taken over, or if there was like 1% of the Jesuits who knew that one day they needed someone on the inside. And I don't know if it was that or if it was completely taken over, but a lot of these things that we're going to see disclosure on, it's going to lead to obviously Israel, but also the Jesuit orders.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, I got one question. I don't want to keep
of course
you here, but the hidden hand of providence. Now that was hijacked by, I guess, Freemasons, right? That's the hidden hand, like with the coat.
To me, Freemasonry. A lot of my videos have been about Freemasonry. To me, if you are interested in my thoughts of Freemasonry, I put out a movie with Jenny Constantine called Dust to Doctrine, and we cover the mummy. And what I believe actually happened or is happening on a daily basis with Freemasonry is this idea that you have to go up or down a path of enlightenment one way with a mentor, with someone checking your ass, going up 33 stairs, Scottish rite, you come down the York rite, and you avoid what are called Shriners when you get to the top of the staircase. A lot of people first of all, they don't go up the right way. They'd rather just do 13 steps. So they go up backwards. So they don't get any of the information. They don't get a master or someone looking over checking their work. They get to the top of the staircase and they meet a Shriner, and the Shriner literally rapes you, either figuratively with needles in the butt to embarrass you, or actually rapes you, and you are now owned by the Shriners. So when everyone's like, oh my God, the Freemasons, no. You're talking about idiots who went up the wrong side of the water, which is part of the entire system itself. They want the people who are full of ambition, who are willing to sell out for the highest bidder. They want the lazy people who go up the wrong side of the ladder because it has 13 steps. They want to filter out all the retards, basically, so that they never get true enlightenment. But if you go up the right way and you run away from the Shriners, meaning you run away from money, basically, because the Shriners offer you money and prestige and all this stuff. When people talk shit about the Freemasons, they talk about 99% of the people who, they did the Freemasonry path, but they did it wrong, backwards. They sold out to the Shriners, and the Shriners, their job is to out all these horrible people. So, like, that is what, like, actually happens. But the Freemasonry itself, it is just enlightenment. It is just teaching you tools. And most people are retarded and do it wrong, which is good, because in the system of itself is a way to weed out those people. So if you do it properly, which I think Trump and his family or people around him did it properly, then we're not going to have that problem. Also, from understanding, it's really just supposed to get us through the dark ages, through tribulations, through whatever time we were in. And one day we'll all have this like enlightenment, and we have to play those stupid games. I hope for that to happen. But as of right now, it had to be these different truths, these different alchemies had to be hidden in a way that they wouldn't be found by treasure seekers or people who would basically sell out.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, and much more. That was amazing. I mean, like you just 0 to 100 real quick. I was just like, does that mean that one certain gesture in the manual? But everything you just said was like, wow, okay, I get it now. You're right, because a lot of things are pulled off by the Masons. And I don't think that all Masons are evil, like you said, and there are 33rd Master Masons, and there are fake cut, everything becomes what's the word I'm looking for? Convoluted, just like the Mass Church, the Joel Osteen's type of church.
Yes.
You're gonna learn today. Anyway, yep.
You nailed it.
Bug. Got him.
All right.
It's just funny. So I mean, everybody listening, you guys can visualize this Guy Fawkes mask in your eyes, kind of this, from my own words, this villainous sort of face where, he was really, he was a handsome man. He was tall. He was built. He was a man's man. He wasn't this kind of, slender sleuth, wearing a cape and a hat and boots. He was really not afraid at all. And it's interesting how this figure of Guy Fawkes has really undergone this strange resurrection. Once the villain of Protestant England, he's really become the patron saint of rebellion, and especially in the digital age. His mask immortalized by V for Vendetta now fronts movements far removed from the 1605 plot. Anonymous, for most notable, the Occupy Wall Street, we saw a bunch of them, and global protest networks everywhere. I even caught some in the latest protests for ICE. You still see them out there. Not everybody, but some of them. And that's all. It's just one now.
I have seen
each wears. Yeah, right. They stand out, and I think it kind of paints like, oh, okay, I can stand with that. I can get behind this rebellion, but it's
the
not
liberals again are trying to take it over and act like the victims and act like the little guys, and it's like you're making fun of yourself. Like the liberals, you're not, and we can't fight the small people individually. They're not very smart. They're made to be very lonely. That's why we see so many older women without husbands, without family, joining these No Kings protests and stuff, and like none of us want kings. We're all cool with not having kings, Republican, MAGA, liberals. But the thing is, like, community triumphs all, and community. These people were made so lonely. 2020, we were all made so lonely. It really ruined like the Gen Z, Gen Alpha, because they couldn't go to school for those 2 years. It did something to make people. So when you give people any type of, community, even if it's as stupid and retarded as the No Kings protest, that's still community. So that's what these evil people do. They starve them of attention and then give them a reason to come together. And a lot of these people were just happy to be out with not even like-minded people, just people in general. And I think a lot of that could be said also for songs. Yeah, but also that could be said for the Q movement, and like we were all ostracized. We were all black sheep of the family. I see things differently than most of the Q movement, even though I stand beside them. One's like, oh, poor Charlie Kirk. And my Godfather episode, I was like, yo, you guys, Turning Point matches up a lot with the weird Godfather episode where on stage in front of everyone, Fredo goes up and kisses his brother's head, going, I know you try to kill me. I'm going to get you back one day. And then stuff follows. So there's a play behind a play that we don't even know about. And I use Turning Point, not Charlie Kirk's name in that scenario, but we don't know if the shot was fired from where mainstream media tells us it was fired, which is the in front of Trump, or if it came from behind Trump. If it came from behind Trump, there was a gentleman who died, and Trump went out and kissed his helmet going, I know you did it. And he did it at a Turning Point rally. And all this weird stuff about Israel funding Turning Point came out right after Charlie's death. So there's a lot of stuff that we don't know about. And yeah.
Save Israel for last.
So much, and I'm glad you bring that to the attention, and you're able to put it in that summary, because it's so true. Because a lot of us don't agree, like, you know, especially with the Flynn and other parts, but it's okay. We all unify, we all enter and understand one another, and can respect each other's opinion. I think it's that shit-eating grin of that mask that's just the ultimate troll, the ultimate clown. That's like, ha ha, f you.
It's a clown face. Yeah.
Right. Yep. So.
Totally.
Yeah, and the people who wear it, they've lost, like, you know, the end of this slide, but they've lost that authenticity of true rebellion.
Absolutely. It's like you see these inorganic, democratic wannabe grassroots Q type movements that we had, but that we did or whatever we have, and it's like, you're not fooling anybody. You're just making an ass of yourself. Move along. Sit this one out. For real.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're heading into the conclusions now. The real exorcism, both of the Gunpowder Plot and V for Vendetta explore the same timeless ritual, the exorcism of corruption from faith, state, and the self. Across centuries, the human spirit wrestles against parasitic institutions that drain conviction and replace it with obedience. Guy Fawkes and V are separated by time, but united by the same purpose: the purging of systems that mistake control for order and fear for morality. The true exorcism in both stories is not the casting out of devils, but the reclaiming of the divine spark within humanity. Moore's masked anarchist channels that sacred defiance, confronting a vitiated world with an ancient truth that no government, church, or ideology holds a monopoly on salvation. Liberation begins where fear ends, and in the end, the mask, the martyr, and the myth all point towards the same revelation: that tyranny, whether political or spiritual, survives only when individuals surrender their inner sovereignty. The real revolution is invisible, the soul remembering it was never meant to kneel. And we can't always say that we can't fight for what we believe in, that we have to bow down to someone else's purpose, that we have to bow down to another person's ideals. You have to look within, and you have to stand up for yourself. And you'll realize when you look to your left, to your right, that there are other people who, as individuals, will coalesce for the same purpose, and you will fight together. You don't have to, conform to one path to be together. You guys will all end up on the same path. Does that make sense?
If we follow truth, we'll all end up in the same area. And I try to tell atheists or agnostic people this, like, okay, if you don't believe in Jesus, I know that the Bible says, John 3:16, he says, like, if you follow truth, Jesus equals truth. They are one and the same. So if you can get these non-believers just to keep pulling the threads of truth, they are following Christ, in my opinion. So as long as I'll just keep asking questions, have our mind open, it's going to be a mind fuck for everyone, even the people of Q, even these truthers who have been doing it since like the 60s and 50s, and like they've always been awake. No one knows how it's going to end. And I truly believe everyone is going to be pleasantly surprised at all this disclosure, and truly surprised. So how does this like matter nowadays? Every creation carries its own opposite within it, a concept mirrored in Da Vinci's use of backward writing. His mirror script was not merely secrecy, but symbolism. Truth is always hidden in reverse. If we're living in the upside down, the truth is probably going to be a little bit opposite of what we think it is. In Hermetic thought, what is bound must be unbound in equal measure. And so backward spell is not dark magic, but conscious unmasking of imbalance. The so-called fake vile Reformation acted as a grand inversion of spirit, replacing divine mystery with political order, transforming heaven into hierarchy. A true reversal that would wound would not rebuild the old church, but restore living current of divinity that predates all institutions. Guy Fawkes's imagined counterspell might let throne and altar mirror one another until neither rules the soul. This line turns conquest into concord, faith without denomination, rule without worship. Fawkes's final act. Okay, so he killed himself. Technically, he was about to be hung. The government, and he chose to leap to his death. So him leaping the scaffold,
gruesome,
completes the symmetry. So historically it was defiance, spiritually inversion. Rather than submit to the state's ritual of execution, he reclaimed that last moment of his will, turning punishment into choice. In that moment, he performed a backwards spell of his own and unmaking tyranny claim of his spirit. The state sought to unwrite him publicly. He unwrote his power privately. Thus, the true reversal is not an outward incantation, but an inward act, the reclamation of conscience from both church and crown. So this whole time, I'm saying, like, okay, this is what has happened in our past. We don't have to choose one or the other in the future, is what I'm saying. And it's not in a way of anarchy in any way, shape, or form. We, the people, own our country here in the US. Not many people can say that over the world. So we, the people, can figure out how we're going to go on with our faith and with ruling our own states. And it really does have to go back to the states, back to the people. You have to. 10 years ago, we only talked about elections the way we've been talking about this past week. If they're big, who's going to be president? But now, after we've been through all this shit, we're like, who's going to be mayor? Like, you have to go tiny. And we finally have gotten to that point because we finally all realized, like, oh, this is how it's. When you were in the National Guard, we were in several different scenarios where the governor of Arizona at the time did not release the National Guard. They still took my man away from me. We had protests and riots in the street in Phoenix. So my man was still taken from me, but they were sat on in some armory and they wouldn't actually put them out onto the streets. So it was like the governor is actually causing this turmoil. And like we saw in the back end, that the National Guard is really these governors' own little armies, and that's how they were using them, and no one paid attention to the National Guard. They're like, oh my God, you're in the National Guard? That's not the real military, when in reality, the real military is theater for a reason. It is this mask of what people are supposed to think the military is, when in reality what was happening was National Guard was sent in all these different states, were set to do these crazy little journeys and no one ever heard about it. No one ever saw it. And it's like, you guys don't understand that the government of the states, of the towns, are more important than some just the big political leaders like the president. So everyone's talking who's going to be president in 2028. And it doesn't matter if it's Trump or not, because we have to worry about, like I said, we're going to find out who won the mayoral election. We have to look at the little guys, and then we won't even have to worry about who the big guys are later on.
Right. And you can't stop the truth no matter what. So it's ironic to me, this guy, Fox, he cheated his ultimate martyrism. Like, that'd be like Jesus taking the easy way out on the cross, being like, nah, forget this, I'm out. You know what I mean? Like, so
turn the tables on them in a way.
Right. And that's why, like, when it happened, it was like, it is done. It is done. It has been fulfilled. Like, F you, Satan, what now? So, he did like a victory lap for 40 days, So,
and to me, that's saying his family, his bloodline, that's a blood oath. You're killing yourself. That's a blood oath. So his blood of this group is going to go to the people who follow him. And we all know someone who is related to him.
Unfortunately, they still quartered him, which was bad, but at least he wasn't,
They weren't the cops.
I'm not going to go into it. It's extremely gruesome what they would do. You can look into it on your own time. But he avoided a terrible fate, and perhaps caused a spiritual lapse in what they were trying to point him at. So, just to put the lid on this, Princess Diana, she's
Not related to Guy Fawkes, but
not
Robert
related
Catesby.
to Guy Fawkes, but the ringleader of this whole plot, Robert Catesby. Robert Catesby was from Dorothy Spencer, who was daughter of Sir John Spencer, and he was the patriarch of this Spencer bloodline. Dorothy ended up marrying Sir Richard Catesby later on, and then they had Robert Catesby. He ended up marrying Catherine Lee, who was the daughter of Catherine Spencer, who had kind of gotten involved with Sir Thomas Lee, and they had a few generations there. But Princess Diana, as we know her, the Princess of Wales, would centuries later would come back into the forefront. I mean, it's the same bloodline. Robert Catesby is from maybe a different branch, but ultimately, I just find it fascinating that this bloodline continues to come up, and that they continue to kind of shake the boundaries of the not only just the crown of England, but the church. And we can go into that another time, but I just wanted to point that out, that it's the same Spencer bloodline that was part of the Gunpowder Plot goes right into Princess Diana, who was extreme. I think she's amazing. What she might have been up to, what was happening to her during that time was unfortunate. And I think that, I call me a conspiracy theorist, but maybe it wasn't all what we seen, what happened in that time, and where, if she had survived and where she is now and what kind of strings she could be pulling.
Just remember, the guy she died with made only a couple videos. Movies. He was a producer. One of the movies he made was Dodie. Made a movie about, if you want to make an exit and fake your death, here's how you do it. And he made a movie. I forgot what it's called. I'll put it up. But yeah, he literally made the movie on how to fake your death and get switched out. So the idea is, if she was killed, it probably was her double. We know that she had a double who would go out in public. In the movie The Crown, there's a part where they even point at this. There's an episode called The Gunpowder Plot, explaining the Diana interview was saying everything wrong with the crown as we know it. And then at the very end, when they do kill her, she comes up and she is herself, and she goes to talk to Prince Charles and the Queen as she's haunting them. And with Prince Charles, she goes, and it's this is the crown. This is TV telling you she got away and faked you guys out, but you guys already said she died, because her double probably did die. Because I would point to the crown at the time actually conspiring to have her killed, and everybody knew that they didn't want her around. So for her to be alive and escape that fate, in order for them to acknowledge that she's alive, they would have had to ultimately find out that the crown had something to do with it. And I don't think it's really a coincidence. And now, I mean, right now, in today, as of this video, King Charles is not doing good, and her eldest son is poised to take the crown and become William V if he chooses that name. But we're falling right in line, and I think it would kind of be a almost line goal for someone of Catesby's bloodline to ultimately take over the throne of England and be able to bring down Parliament if that's what they so chose, or to live up to those expectations. So again, this is why bloodlines are so important. That's why we see this happening over a very slow drip, not just in our lifetimes or in one generation, but over hundreds of years. These things play out, and they continue to play out, and the smoking guns are everywhere. So I have to bring this up for the video, and I appreciate Lexi for including this slide. So, I mean, what do you think about that?
Man, as always, thank you. It's just an honor to be a guest and to revisit and know all this stuff and learn it all. It's just amazing, and you guys do such a good job. You guys are the ultimate team. I love it. And I'm just mind blown per usual. So I love this. I know there's a lot more that goes with the Diana Spencer line, and she was the first one to call them out, and they hated her because she was one of the people loved her, adored her. I'll never forget her funeral. I was 97. I was 11 years old, so it was just rainy day. I'll just never. like, Columbine, the Oklahoma City bombing, like all these things that happened throughout life, 9/11, they all stick with me because it just so happened. Like there wasn't like 100 channels on TV back then. There was like 30.
It was on every channel though. I remember the day she died. Yeah.
For like
it was
2 days
everywhere.
straight.
It was terrible.
It was raining. There was like flower barricades on all boat streets. You had Elton John out there singing "Candle in the Wind." It was a little touching in the heart, man. Pulling on the old heartstrings there, So, brilliantly done by her, and it just shows. I think we're gonna see what really went down. And she was the first one to talk about how they're not us, they're not human, and a lot of things that got swept under the rug, and the whole Jimmy Savile thing, and how she was terrified of him and Charles and what the family did, and these vile, disgusting acts of things. And it's gonna be great when everything comes full circle and we are liberated, and it's almost here. So
we shall see the day, no doubt.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Once again, you guys did a great job on the presentation. You just paint such a good picture. I'm just glad to be along for the ride and learn and look in and know so much more in depth about Guy Fawkes and everything. It's so cool.
Yeah,
so good stuff. So
well, I hope you learned something.
Let you go eat.
The audience, guys. Yeah, dinner time. Likewise.
I went through those last slides real quick. I was like,
I can hear her tummy bubbling right
it's
now.
like, all right, well,
she's like hangry.
I'll get my thoughts on Freemasonry.
Yeah, that really got you hungry.
Yeah. Right. I was like, I just wanted to make sure it was the symbol. I didn't know, but it was awesome. I learned a whole nother thing unexpectedly. Like, yes, cool, great. Yeah, because I'm like, man, I'm hungry and it's my time. I know it's hungry your time. Once again, it's an honor to be like unifying with you guys and pumping these shows out. And doing
yes.
So. Yeah. So
Alrighty.
can't wait to see it. And you guys have a great night.
Likewise. Thanks for joining us. You all take care and be safe.
All right. Have a great night, guys. Thank you. God bless.
Bye.